I stood in my apartment, the rain streaked window reflecting the Seattle skyline as I held the cream colored envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable, my mother's elegant script, a ghost from a past I thought I'd buried. The invitation was to a wedding, not just any wedding, but my sister's. The names embossed in gold Camille Desmond Hale sent a chill down my spine. Desmond Hale, the man who had once humiliated me in a boardroom, was now marrying my sister. The irony was almost laughable if it weren't so cruel. The envelope hadn't belonged in my mailbox. It was too deliberate, too calculated. The script was precise, each letter a testament to the control my mother exerted over every aspect of her life, including, it seemed, my exclusion from it. I stared at the invitation, the edges curling slightly in my grasp, as if the very paper was recoiling from the deceit it carried. I paced around my apartment, the invitation clutched in my hand like a talisman of past wounds. 12 years had passed since my family had erased me from their lives. No calls, no holidays, just a void where I once belonged. The silence had been deafening, a constant reminder of the chasm that had opened between us. And now, this wedding invitation, no note, no apology, just a cold summons wrapped in gold foil. It wasn't a mistake. The script was too deliberate. This wasn't an olive branch, it was a setup. I could feel it in my gut, a twisted knot of anticipation and dread. They wanted me there, but not out of any sense of familial duty or longing. No, this was a power play, a carefully orchestrated move in a game I hadn't even known we were playing. But I wasn't the same person they had cast out all those years ago. I had built a life for myself, a successful business, and a loving marriage. I had a husband who believed in me when no one else would, who had stood by me through the darkest times and celebrated the brightest victories. I opened my closet and pulled out a sleek black dress, the one I'd been saving for a moment like this. It was powerful, elegant, and ready for war. I ran my fingers over the fabric, feeling the strength it represented. This dress wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was armor, a testament to the battles I'd fought and won. It was a symbol of the woman I had become, resilient, unyielding, and unwilling to be silenced any longer. My phone buzzed with a text from Jared. "You okay?" he asked, his concern palpable even through the screen. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I considered my response. I could tell him the truth, that I was anything but okay, that the invitation had stirred up a whirlwind of emotions I thought I'd long since buried. But I didn't. Instead, I typed, "I'm going to the wedding." I didn't hesitate. There was no room for doubt, not anymore. He knew what it meant, the weight of the decision, and the battle that lay ahead. But he also knew that I was ready, that I had been preparing for this moment for years, even if I hadn't realized it until now. I zipped up the dress, the sound echoing through the room like a battle cry. I stepped into my heels, the click of the metal against the floor, a stark reminder of the power I held. I looked at myself in the mirror, my reflection staring back at me with a determination I hadn't seen in years. I was polished, composed, ruthless. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table. I was coming to flip the damn table over. That night, I couldn't sleep. My body was still, but my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and memories. I sat by the window, the city lights flickering below like a silent symphony to my turmoil. Jerry was out cold, his steady breathing a comforting rhythm in the otherwise silent room. I clutched the invitation, the paper crinkling under my grip as if echoing the storm within me. The next morning, I did what I always do. When my head gets too loud, I walk. Pike Place Market was just waking up, the sounds of crates clattering and espresso hissing filling the air. The scent of fish and bread and tulips was thick, a sensory overload that should have calmed me. But it didn't. Instead, it took me back to a time when I was just a teenager, hoping someone, anyone, would believe me. I remembered the day my mother's diamond necklace went missing, the accusations that followed, and the silence that became my constant companion. I remembered the whispers in college, the blog post that cost me a research grant, and the professor who told me that perception mattered more than truth. I remembered the pain, the betrayal, and the loneliness, but I also remembered the strength I found in that solitude, the resilience that grew from the ashes of my past. As I walked through the market, the memories washed over me like a tidal wave. But I didn't drown in them, I let them fuel me. I let them remind me of why I was doing this, of why I had to attend this wedding and face the demons of my past. I wasn't doing it for closure or revenge. I was doing it for myself, for the girl who had been silenced and erased, for the woman who had risen from the ashes and refused to be broken. I returned home, the weight of my decision settling over me like a cloak. I was ready. ready to face my past, ready to reclaim my name, ready to flip the table on their perfect facade. And as I stood there, the invitation clutched in my hand, I knew that this was just the beginning. The storm was coming, and I was the eye of the hurricane. I found myself at Pike Place Market, the bustling sounds and smells taking me back to a time when I was just a teenager, hoping anyone, would believe me. The market was a sensory overload, a cacophony of life that mirrored the chaos within me. The scent of fresh fish mingled with the aroma of baking bread and the vibrant hues of tulips, each sensation pulling me deeper into the past. I remembered the day my mother's diamond necklace went missing. I wasn't supposed to be in her room. Camille had left the curling iron on again, and I got blamed. I went in to unplug it, that was it. 10 minutes later, my father's boomed through the house, accusing me of being the only one in there. Camille, with fake tears and all, stood by as my mother snapped, "You've always been selfish." They never found the necklace, not in my room, not anywhere, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. I wasn't punished, I was erased. Dinner alone, no rides, no friends, just silence. Camille smirked in the hallway like the universe had finally aligned in her favor. That's when I learned the truth in my family. Image mattered more than facts. They had already picked their golden child, and it wasn't me. College was supposed to be my reset, a chance to start over and prove myself. But the whispers followed me, culminating in a blog post that shattered my world. "Did you see this?" my roommate asked, shoving her phone in my face. The headline read, "The Real Rowena Clade, the girl who leaves, steals, and plays the victim." There was no author, of course, but the tone was unmistakable. Camille's venom dripped from every word. The post accused me of manipulating professors, of stealing, of playing the victim. It cost me a research grant and nearly made me quit school. I couldn't prove it was Camille, but I knew it like a scar etched into my soul. I thought I'd moved on, buried all that pain until the invitation arrived. It reopened the wound that had never truly healed. I pulled up the old blog, not thinking it would still be live, but there it was, still online, still poisonous. No tears this time, just fire. They never cleaned up the mess they made. They never thought I'd come back to find it. I screenshotted everything, saved server data. This wasn't nostalgia, this was evidence. The irony hit hard the next morning. I wasn't even looking for it, just sipping coffee, half awake, scrolling through emails when a LinkedIn notification popped up. "Congrats to alumna Camille for her groundbreaking research featured in the Leaders in Wellness Spotlight." My stomach dropped as I clicked the article, already bracing for impact. The title was mine, word for word. The phrases, the model, the exact conclusion I spent months refining, all lifted and stamped with her name. There she was, beaming beside the article, polished and radiant, like life had only ever handed her green lights. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered, the weight of the betrayal settling over me like a shroud. But of course she hadn't been kidding. Camille had always gotten away with it, and our parents just nodded, beamed, and said, "She's gifted, honey. Maybe take notes." They never asked where her talent came from. Back in college, I was barely staying afloat, tutoring at sunrise, stocking shelves past midnight, living off cold ramen and campus Wi-Fi. My thesis was everything: 8 months of work on a nutritional model for underserved neighborhoods built from real community data. One night, Camille dropped by, said she was just in the area. I was exhausted, proud, starving for validation. "I think this could actually win something," I told her, "maybe even that Women in Health Sciences scholarship." She smiled, too soft, too sweet. "Wow, you did all this. I should have known." A week later, my research folder vanished from the student drive, no log, no trace. I submitted an old backup, half done. It bombed. They announced the winner at the spring gala, Camille, of course. My name wasn't even listed. She waved, my parents clapped from the front row, and someone behind me muttered, "She's just on another level." I smiled like I wasn't breaking in half. I never told anyone who would believe me. The tired, angry sister, the girl barely passing by us, that she earned it, they said. "She works harder than you think," my mom added. "You could learn from her," my dad said. I did learn from her. I learned that sometimes the truth isn't enough. Sometimes you have to fight for it tooth and nail. I printed the LinkedIn article and slid it into a manila folder already thick with receipts, screenshots of her anonymous blog posts, suspicious transcripts, and sketchy financial records. That fake smile she wore like it was bulletproof. This wasn't about revenge. It was about proof. For me to know I hadn't imagined it, that the lies were real, that they didn't forget me, they erased me. I added a sticky note to the folder. This is where her story ends. Still, I didn't comment, didn't forward it, didn't say a word. I waited because I've learned that when someone sets a trap for you, the smartest move is to pretend you didn't see it. then show up anyway, let them shine, let them get comfortable. I'll be the one holding the switch when the lights go out. She wore the crown, but I built the throne. And now I was coming to take it back. The day of the wedding arrived, and I walked into the Grand Solace Hotel, head held high, wearing a navy silk dress that clung just right backless and unapologetic. I didn't come to blend in, I came to be seen. The ballroom doors swung open, and just like that, every eye in the room landed on me. The hum of conversation faltered. A few gasps echoed, and champagne flutes paused midair. Vivian's hand twitched, her perfectly manicured fingers tightening around her crystal stem. Her face didn't break, but her eyes said everything. She wasn't supposed to come. Camille looked up from her seat near the stage, her smile strained. It cracked at the edges like something brittle left out in the cold too long. And Desmond, his jaw clenched the second he saw me, as if the memory hit him harder than he expected. I took a slow step forward, then another, letting the quiet stretch. You didn't expect me to RSVP, I said, my voice steady, eyes locked on my mother. I didn't. I just arrived. I wasn't there for forgiveness, I was there for the reckoning. Dinner continued, but the air stayed heavy, the clinking of silverware sounding like distant thunder. People whispered, pretending not to stare, but they all did. The toast began with Camille's best friend standing, glass raised, gushing about love, resilience, and destiny. I let her finish, let the polite applause settle, then I stood. I'd like to say a few words, I announced, stepping up beside the speaker. I held up my glass to truth and those who fake it. The silence was instant. Even the music stopped. I turned to Camille and said, sweetly, where exactly did you earn your MD? Her lips parted, but nothing came out, just a stammer, a slight shake of the head. I only ask, I continued, pulling a small folder from my clutch, because this transcript you submitted to the Health Advisory Board is interesting. I handed it to Desmond, who accepted it without a word. It says you graduated with honors from Pacific University. Problem is, the course codes don't match their curriculum, and you never submitted a final capstone. Also, your GPA is inflated by quite a bit. Camille's voice finally cracked through the tension. This is insane. This is not the time or place. Vivian stood then, her voice sharp, trying to take control. Enough of this, Rowena. If you had an ounce of class. I turned to her, calm as ice. Class, you forged a DNA test to disinherit me. Sit down. Gasps spread like wildfire. I looked back at Camille. You built your entire career on a lie, a medical lie, while real people trusted you, believed in your expertise. Desmond's hands trembled as he scanned the document. He looked up at her slowly. Is this true? Camille didn't answer, she couldn't. He dropped the papers onto the table and stepped back. I defended you, he said, his voice low and tight. God, I defended you to everyone. Camille reached for him. Des, baby, please don't let her ruin this. You did ruin it, he snapped. With that, he walked out. Camille tried to follow, but no one moved with her. The room remained still, her audience evaporated, her perfect image cracked under the weight of her silence. I didn't stay for dessert. I walked out of that ballroom without a glance back. Outside, the night air was crisp and cold against my skin, but I welcomed it. I breathed it in like clarity. My phone buzzed in my bag, a voicemail. I didn't need to listen. I already knew the tone tight, venomous, calculated. Vivian always did hate losing control. I deleted it without opening it. Above me, the sky stretched dark and open. I looked up and smiled. That was just the beginning. The message landed in my inbox at 6:14 .m.-no subject line. No sender name I recognized. Just one sentence, I remember you. You deserve to know what really happened with Camille's suspension. My pulse kicked as I clicked the attachment, a redacted hospital incident report dated back to 2017. The patient was a male, age 9, diagnosed with mild asthma, overnight observation. The outcome, induced coma due to incorrect dosage of epinephrine. The attending physician, Dr. Camille Hale. Status, case dismissed, no charges filed, no accountability, just a buried scandal and a clean slate. I blinked at the screen, barely breathing. Attached to the email was a short note. She wasn't supposed to be near a pediatric floor, but they pulled strings. I couldn't say anything back then, but maybe you can now. My hands trembled, then steadied. This wasn't just about me anymore. I saved the files, encrypted them twice, and moved fast. By noon, an anonymous tip landed in inbox of 3 independent Seattle health watchdog blogs, the kind of outlets that thrived in whistleblowers and weren't afraid of lawsuits. I didn't sign my name, I didn't need to, but I also didn't stop there. I open a new message to Dr. Thomas Kellner, subject re-residency reinstatement clarification needed. I wrote, would you like to clarify how your star resident was reinstated without a formal hearing after a pediatric incident with long-term trauma effects? I'm attaching records you may have forgotten to review. I didn't need him to reply. The silence from institutions is always louder than their words. By the following morning, Camille's profile was scrubbed from the hospital's website. Social media lit up like a spark to dry leaves. Dr. Camille Hale was removed from the pediatric center list. Why? Unconfirmed rumors about malpractice in 2017 resurfaced. I watched from my laptop, coffee in hand, the way one might observe a building being demolished, controlled, necessary, satisfying. At 3:42 p.m., Vivian showed up at my door. She didn't knock, she pounded. I opened it calmly and stepped aside. You've gone too far, she hissed, barely inside. This is accountability week, I said, my arms crossed. This is your sister's wedding week, she snapped. She put a child in a coma. No charges were filed because you made sure of that. Her eyes flared. You don't understand the pressure she was under. No, you don't get to twist this into some sad little pity story. You protected her lies and buried a family's pain just to keep your name clean. She stared at me, breathing heavy, fury pouring off her in waves. Behind her in the hallway, I noticed Gregory, quiet and still for once, not defending, not posturing, just absorbing. His silence said more than his words ever could. You think this makes you powerful, Vivian? I asked, my voice steady. You think being vindictive makes you righteous? No, I walked to the door and opened it wide, but telling the truth makes me free. She didn't move. I won't be quiet again, I added. So, unless you came here to confess something, you can leave. For a long moment, she stood there. Then, without a word, she walked out. I closed the door behind her, turned, and exhaled. I called a number from the email. The nurse, her name was Teresa, picked up after 3 rings. I wanted to say thank you, I said. There was a pause, then her voice, soft but firm. Someone had to speak up. I just didn't expect it would be the sister. Neither did they, I replied. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. They thought it would never come, and it's only just arrived. The file landed on my desk like a quiet detonation. It wasn't printed on heavy stock paper or stamped in red. It was simple, clean legal audit results compiled by Jared's firm, neatly organized with tabs and dates. No dramatics, just devastating facts. Wire transfers from the Moore Family Clinic, reimbursements, medical equipment purchases, charitable donations, every last one tagged under my name, Rowena Clade. There were IRS filings in years I hadn't earned a dime, returns I never submitted, refunds I never saw. The first transaction dated back to when I was 19, living on energy bars and sharing a studio apartment with 2 roommates and a mold problem. I didn't have a credit card, let alone a reason for a $42,000 medical consulting fee. They used me as a shield while I was eating ramen in a shared basement. They tied your identity to at least 4 shell accounts, Jared said, standing behind me, arms crossed. If this hadn't been flagged in a forensic sweep, the IRS would have come for you next year. I couldn't speak. There's a difference between being abandoned and being exploited. One leaves you hurt, the other leaves you gutted. They didn't just cast me out. They built a financial firewall from the ashes of my existence. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I moved because I finally had the final brick and I was going to take the whole damn tower down with it. The Moore Foundation gala was black tie, media heavy, and crawling with donors and legacy families. I didn't have an invite, but I didn't need one. I wore black, slipping in through a side entrance past catering trays and wine lists. The rod of polished corruption thick in the air. Gregory was mid-speech when I walked onto the stage. The room hushed like someone had pulled a fire alarm. He blinked, confused, until recognition dawned. Vivian froze mid-sip. Camille flinched, and I smiled, microphone in hand. Before you donate tonight, I said, my voice slow and calm, you might want to know where your money's been going. Gasp echoed as I handed a USB drive to the AV tech behind me. One labeled file read Rowena Clay Consulting, beneath it a signature G. Moore. Murmurs spread through the crowd. A few stood, and one donor's wife whispered, is that her real daughter? Vivian turned pale. Gregory reached for the mic, his voice sharp. This is a mistake. These documents, they're clearly doctored. Actually, a voice said from the crowd, they're not. Jared stepped forward, Sue crisp, expression unreadable. Our firm submitted the originals to the IRS and the state attorney general. Gregory's mouth snapped shut. Then Desmond appeared beside him. And to the medical board, he added, his voice steady. I won't stand behind frauds anymore. Vivian tried to salvage it, reaching for Camille, but Camille pulled her hand away, glaring. How could you drag me into this? She hissed. Row by row, the audience turned on them. The once perfect Moore family, Seattle's elite, unraveled under the chandeliers they loved so much. I didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there in the storm of their collapse, steady as stone. They had the money, the status, the lies, but I had the truth, and it was louder than all of them. I didn't wait for the fallout. I didn't linger for applause. I walked out, the air outside cold but clean, the kind of crispness that made everything before feel suffocating. My heart pounded not from nerves, but from release. This moment wasn't about revenge or fury. It was about peace. It was truth finally unchained. I looked up at the sky, the city skyline twinkling like it was in on the secret with me. Truth, I whispered, is finally enough. 2 weeks later, my world was quiet, not the eerie kind of silence that follows an explosion, not the numb, shell-shocked stillness that feels like it's waiting for something else to fall apart. This was peace. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, and for once, I didn't wake up dreading a phone call, a headline, or a lawyer's letter. No reporter had camped outside, no call from Vivian, not even a burner text from Camille. Just air, still and clean. I padded barefoot to the balcony, coffee in hand, robe loose around my waist. The city below kept moving, but up here it felt like time paused for me. I sipped my coffee and let it settle into me. The old Rowena would have second-guessed it, waited for the other shoe, searched the sky for smoke. But not this time, because nothing was left to burn. I still hadn't deleted the voicemail. I don't know why. Her voice crackled slightly too tight, too furious. You've humiliated us. You'll regret this. I don't know who you think you are, but you will answer for what you've done. But it was the last line that stayed with me, not the words, the sound. A catch in her throat, almost like pain. Almost. It wasn't an apology, not even close. It was still control, even now, still spinning her narrative, even in defeat. But it didn't sting anymore. Camille never called, not a single text, not even a fake "Are you happy now?" voicemail. I didn't expect her to. Desmond, though, surprised me. He sent one message I didn't know. I'm sorry, I stared at it for a long time before typing back. I know, I believe you, but I don't need anything from you anymore. And I meant it. Letting go doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it just comes with choice. Gregory's medical license was under suspension, the clinic frozen pending a full investigation. IRS audit teams had started combing through 12 years of reports. Vivian had gone dark, no interviews, no charity appearances, no statements. And Camille? Word was she left the city quietly, probably hoping to rebuild somewhere no one knew her name. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't anything. I was watching because when people fall, it's easy to cheer or pity, but sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply witness. That's enough for me. That afternoon, I walked into my office downtown. My staff, my people, smiled, greeted me with warmth and respect. No fear, no gossip, just community. Miriam showed up that evening, my first real boss, the one who handed me a broom instead of a lecture when I was 17 and homeless. She brought flowers, sunflowers actually. You made it out, she said, her voice cracking just slightly. I had to, I told her. There was no air left in there. Jared took my hand across the dinner table that night. He didn't say much, he didn't need to. You did what no one else could, Rel, he said finally. You gave them every chance, and when they still chose power over love, you didn't let them take you down with them. I nodded, too full to speak, not with food, with clarity. Because I had spent years thinking justice had to look like punishment. But maybe, just maybe, it looks like release. And maybe freedom doesn't always come with forgiveness, but it comes. And when it does, it feels like standing barefoot in sunlight with no one else deciding your story for you. They may never say sorry, but I no longer need to hear it. I am free. And maybe that's what healing really looks like. Not fireworks, not dramatic finales, just waking up and realizing you're no longer fighting to be seen, heard, or loved by people who only ever wanted to shape you into something they could control. If my story touched something in you, if you've ever been silenced, cast aside, or made to feel like your worth depended on someone else's approval, I want you to hear this. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't have to keep carrying the weight they dropped on you. You don't have to protect those who never protected you. You are allowed to speak up, to step away, to rebuild, and yes, even to thrive without ever hearing "I'm sorry." Because forgiveness is powerful, but freedom is everything.